Okay, our guest today is a former secondary school teacher in Ireland. Today, he will be speaking to us about his experience running workshops with transition year and fifth year students. Our guest is on course to work with around 5,000 students this academic year. Please welcome our guest, Seán McWeeney.
Hi Ian, how's it going?
Yep, really well, thanks, Seán. And how are you doing?
Not too bad at all, yeah. Good and
Yep,
relaxed. You're in a hotel in Antrim, so it's not
lovely,
too bad.
excellent. That to hear it. So, Seán, I'm interested in knowing. So, I understand that you run um, games and puzzles to engage with the students, and I'd be interested to hear about how you run your workshops.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the most popular workshop I have is a juggling workshop.
Okay.
So the students learn the skills of juggling and then apply what they've learned to the maths curriculum. So every flight of a ball, for example, can be represented using a parabola or using a quadratic function. So it's kind of matching the real world juggling and real world emphasis to an abstract notion of quadratic equations. But it's fun and dynamic. I always like to make it as enjoyable as possible. I play lots of music. They only juggle for about the length of a song, so they never really get bored of juggling. And then we take it in turns, juggling maths, juggling maths, juggling maths.
Mm.
It just keeps it quite dynamic. I do another one then, which just involves matchsticks. That's all. That's the only prop
Mm-hmm.
I bring, and it becomes competitive. So that's where the
Mm-hmm.
games come into it. So it gives them games that they don't even realize that there's a linear pattern deep rooted beyond it. But
Mm-hmm.
any student I've done it with has discovered that this pattern is vital for it. So it's kind of like how we discover theories about the world. I always feel like they're hidden there deep within, and it just takes some time to unearth them and get your thinking going right, and then you will figure things out. So I suppose, in short, it's about making it as engaging as possible and giving them props that they can physically hold and physically relate to, I suppose, is the biggest thing.
Amazing. That sounds amazing. And I'm curious to know. So, what gave you this idea to start doing workshops? So you mentioned you're a former secondary school teacher. What gave you this idea?
Yeah, I suppose I worked for a long time in Dublin, in a deaf school or disadvantaged school, and I seen a lot of workshops going on. And I suppose in ways I kind of took inspiration from some, and then from others I went, "Oh Jesus, that has to be better." You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So kind of just over time, I suppose it was really over the space of 10 years, I started building a bank of resources together, just little things that I've seen or thought of wherever it might be, and I never rushed anything. I just kind of let things flow themselves. And if an opportunity came up for me, I went for it. And that would cause me to kind of have the thoughts that go in the back of my head come to the front of my head.
Mhm.
Like I do think we process a lot more behind our eyes than we even realize. And it's not until it's made urgent that you actually realize how much you know or how good an idea is more than
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah, fascinating. And have you found, what have you learned through this experience? So teaching your workshops that you do, what have you learned yourself?
Oh, tons, tons. I
Yeah.
don't know where to begin. I suppose and go through a mutual friend, Ian.
Hmm.
I've learned a lot about delivery.
Hmm.
I suppose today, I'll be honest, today I had a really tough day. Dealing with difficult students, but I do put it mainly down to myself. A couple of things. I didn't pitch it at the right level.
Hmm.
I didn't have a warm up task to win them over to get them on my side. And I suppose it was more tiredness as well. When you're tired, there's a huge impact on it. They're all things that influence my presentation or my kind of how I'm delivering the thing, and that impacts the students a lot.
Hmm.
I've also noticed things like older buildings and newer buildings that can influence their behavior and their attitudes a lot. Things like the time of day, even down as far as just drinking water. Like the value of drinking water is huge. I know every time if I'm not drinking water, I drop the ball. It happens all the
Hmm.
time. So I've learned little things like that. But then I've learned plenty more about business as well, which is kind of nice, kind of having the confidence to, pitch it at the right level and kind of know your worth and kind of organization around, well, I'm here today, I'm there tomorrow, making that work. But I suppose the biggest learning I have to take is it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be something that I'm capable of doing for the next 10 or 15 years. And I need to find ways of doing that. And that's where I'm hoping to go, is to kind of to employ other people to deliver similar workshops
Mhm.
in the same ethos throughout the country.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And so I suppose one thing I'm thinking about is um, in terms of, let me just think for a moment now. In terms of the workshops themselves, so you mentioned that you have so you have like a bank. So are you continuing to build on that bank of games that different ways that you have activities and games?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I do. I'm not a computer gamer,
Mhm.
but I have a real appreciation for really simple games. For really simple games, I'm not sure one that I basically use is called Picky Sticky,
Oh,
and it just involves matchsticks, and it's me against you, and there's just 15 matchsticks, and we go for it. And then I've other ones. I like to call it a ton of counting. There's tons of them. There's just so many that they're really simple,
mhm,
but the more you look into them, the deeper the mathematics starts to appear. And I think I've maybe it's just me that has an appreciation for that. But I do feel there's a market there for it as well, that people are interested in that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be online games. I suppose a kind of a business decision I had was around the metaverse. I
mhm,
designed a world for Leaving Cert students, a virtual world where
mhm,
they could take an exam paper question,
mhm,
and it happened to be about candles in the shape of cylinders and cones. And in this virtual world, they could pick them up and compare them and measure them and answer the questions. But it was a disaster. There was no one really going for it. The metaverse just kind of fell to pieces. But I haven't lost heart from it. I still think I can still develop that further. I'm hopeful to
mhm,
kind of to bring juggling into the virtual world, or at least augmented reality or something like that, just to give people the most immersive
mhm.
feel I can give them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And because I'm thinking, even with juggling, I'm thinking about myself. I'm sure I'd struggle to juggle. So how do the students find that? Like, do they find that they have difficulty? Can they
Y-
pick it up?
Yeah, I suppose it's all about how I deliver it. Um, I usually start with two. Sometimes I start with one, depending on the ability of the students, and we'll go 3 or 4 minutes where it's just do two throws.
Mhm,
Don't worry about the catches. Go for another 4 minutes. Do two throws, make two catches. Three balls, no catches. So
mhm,
I'm giving them new goals all the time, but it's always just a little kind of step further on than their previous ones. So they're really learning on their iterations, or they're iterating the learning, where they're saying, well, I got that wrong before, but if I try this, I'll get it right. And they build a
mhm,
bit of confidence that way. Then by the end of it, usually I always consider, if you can do three throws and three catches, that you're a qualified juggler.
mhm,
But oftentimes, maybe 7 people out of a class of 24 will get that.
mhm,
And it's up to me to get across the message that the other 17 haven't failed. The biggest thing for me is that they persisted. They kept trying for the full 2 hours, or however long it might be, without giving up. And to me, that's even more noble than maybe somebody who is sporty, or plays hurling or whatever it might be. Um, they obviously have already got an advantage. So the kid who really struggles and really finds it difficult but persists, they deserve as much praise as the kid who just found it easy and learned how to do it straight away.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree a lot with that, because there's a lot of, like you say, it's a very noble thing, and also the fact that they keep trying, and they get the feedback, and they're not they're still working at it, and they're improving. And do you see many students, say, in that situation where they're trying for a long time and actually succeed?
Oh God, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love
yeah,
that moment. Yeah,
yes, yes,
I
yeah,
let them celebrate it. I'm like, if
yes,
you have that moment where you get it, go for it. Be delighted with yourself.
yeah,
Just don't hold back. I think that's a big thing as well. I suppose it's about dealing with your emotions as well,
absolutely, yeah.
because it can be frustrating. It can, like, learning anything, regardless of what you're learning, can be a very tricky time. And if you overcome that, that's when you excel. So yeah, I do enjoy that moment when they succeed. Yeah, I have to say.
Mhm. Excellent, because I think it's an important point. Like I know, oftentimes students might think, oh, so talking about maths, people might think, oh, do you know, I'm not mathematically inclined, and I think it's a shame, but it's a shame because like you say, it might just be a few things, a little bit of persistence, and they
Yeah,
might
and
be
I
able to do well.
think I think I'd always noticed that some students have, a fixed mindset, for want of a better
Hmm.
term. We've all heard of fixed mindset and growth mindset, but literally the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is just the word yet.
Hmm.
Like if a student says, "Well, I can't juggle yet," they're showing to me that they're willing to keep trying. Where when a student goes, "Oh, I'm no good at this," or "Oh, I was never any good," or "Maths isn't for me," or
Hmm.
"I'm no good at my hands," they're really closing off their potential. And I suppose a lot of it stems from parents. I'd always, because well, my little fella, myself and my partner, are trying to raise him with a bit of Irish as well.
Hmm.
And we'd always encourage other parents to do it as well. And oftentimes the parents go, "Oh, I was no good at Irish in school," or "Oh, sure, I'm no good at Irish." And they completely talk themselves down. And
Hmm.
like realistically, monkey see, monkey do. They're going to, if your son or daughter hears you saying, "Oh, I'm no good at it, I was no good in school," or "Jesus, no, I was terrible at this," they're automatically going to go, "Well, that's how I'll be." It's
Hmm.
kind of innate in us. So I do think just kind of being careful around, the language you use and that sort of thing. Even if a parent says, "Ah, well, I struggled with it, but I kept trying."
Hmm.
That's huge for a child to hear that. That's absolutely massive.
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Um, And I suppose talking about mindset, I know, I think in one of your videos on Instagram, you mentioned that some students oftentimes are a little bit reluctant. So I'm curious to know, where do you think that reluctance comes from? So when I say reluctance, I'm talking about maybe taking part in the juggling. Maybe
In
they're
the
a bit fearful.
juggling,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I do think a fear of failure, big time,
Mm.
big time. With girls in particular, you would notice it quite often. Also, girls being a bit more socially developed are
Hmm.
also more inclined to be conscious of each other.
Okay.
Lads just go for it. They're just
Hmm.
like, "Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
I'm throwing away," and don't
Yes.
notice themselves. Whereas girls more tend to be like, "Oh, who's looking at me and what are they
Hmm.
concentrating on?" So the way I combat that is I always get everybody facing the same way. I just
Hmm.
make sure everyone
Interesting.
faces the same way. So you're only concentrated on yourself. And the people down the back, we always know the people down the back is always the students who are like, "Oh, let me go down the back." They run down and they want to get away. Well, great. There's nobody watching them. Everybody else is facing the other way, so that kind of helps them too.
Interesting. That's a yeah, very interesting way of. It's a creative way of making. Like, I love that. There's a way of, okay, how do we get more engagement? How do we get the
Yeah,
involvement? And just finding ways to do that. And with the other games, do you find that happening as well? Like that fear of failure, or are they different?
it depends. So I kind of use the other games, especially the matchstick games, and I have other ones, kind of life-size jigsaws and things like that. But the matchstick games in particular, because it's competitive, some people can give up even quicker.
Okay.
But the way that I combat that is I say to the table, "Okay, now as tables, as groups, you need to beat me." So
Mm.
the two of them have to think together, and it becomes a team effort. And then the motivation increases again, because it's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
geez, I'm not alone on this. I can talk about it."
Hmm.
And I always encourage everybody just to keep making mistakes. Just
Yeah.
keep getting things wrong. So what if you get it wrong? Just keep getting it wrong, making mistake after mistake after mistake. Because after 50 or 100 fails or mistakes, you're eventually going to spot a pattern of some sort.
Mm. It's very interesting, that, because I think oftentimes, like, even like, students up through to adults as well. I think fear of failure, or kind of wondering, oh, what would that person think if I don't do well, if I don't do something well. Yeah, it's an interesting thought, and it's interesting to hear how you combat that through doing just multiple takes. It sounds like that's the
Yeah.
best way to do it.
Yeah, just give them time, and kinda I think the music helps a lot.
Mm.
I play music when they're playing games or when they're juggling, because it just takes that air out of the staff room, sorry. It takes the air out of the classroom,
Hmm.
where nobody's making a comment on each other, and it's just, they can only hear the music, so
Hmm.
they're not focused on each other. And that kind of concentration on each other and
Hmm.
comparing yourself to others
Hmm.
can be really detrimental. And I suppose in a way it stifles creativity.
Yes.
I love creativity. I love, kind of people who think differently. But the worst thing you can do to somebody is judge them. Is make a
Yeah.
comment on it. If someone gives you an idea, whether it's bad or good, say, "Tell me more."
Yeah.
Expand the idea. What are you thinking? I always think that helps rather than shutting it down straight away. If you shame somebody or you judge somebody, they're not going to be willing to have another idea. So that was a big learning of mine as well.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating to hear all these steps,
Thanks.
and I'm wondering so after your sessions, what's the type of feedback that the students would give you after the sessions?
Yeah, generally, like, I have to say, kids in general are very thankful.
Mm,
They're really thankful. They're just like, "Thanks so much," and
yeah.
there's a genuine feel about them as well. That's the most dominant reaction I get. I suppose today I had the opposite. Today I
Mm,
had kids who went, "Oh, I didn't like that. It was boring,"
mm,
because they were really struggling with it. If I had
mm,
pitched it at their level, I would have got a different response. I feel anyway. It was just that I went in with too high level of material
mhm.
and expected too much of them from the juggling as well. And if
Yep,
you're failing and it really feels like you should be doing like a sizable bit better, then you're going to lose motivation.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Yeah, there's always that risk, isn't there? It's always like, if the challenge is too low, it's too boring.
It's too boring.
If the challenge is too high, then it's
Yeah.
like it's the oh I
The-
can't do it. I'm no good at it. I'll just
yeah, they call it the zone of proximal development.
yes,
Yes,
yeah.
indeed. Yeah, yeah.
And how do you know how to gauge it? What steps do you take to find out what level
Eh,
students are at?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing I do is I talk to the teacher and just say,
Mhm,
what are the needs in the class.
mhm,
Um, then I have a couple of introduction tasks that I do that gives me a gauge of the room, and I could, by them, almost assess the entire group.
mhm,
Depending on how many people got it, how many people struggled, their concentration during the time, that sort of thing. I can judge by it then, and then I can make an informed decision on it. I'm trying to avoid the idea of, branding people straight away
mhm.
and
Yep.
kind of having people being like, well, these are a weak group. These are a whatever foundation level group at this. I'm kind of like, let's not use the word weak and strong on them. Let's just, use like these guys are interested or these guys
Mhm,
struggle or whatever it might be. Because I noticed in one game in particular, I'll never forget this. I was teaching a school in Dublin and there was a kid in second year
mhm,
and his reading age was very, very low, the lowest it
mhm,
could be. To the point that he couldn't even tell the difference between the word cat and cow. But me and him were playing a game
mhm.
and it was roll the dice and it was closest. I think we said closest to 15 or something like that was the dice. And you rolled it and you decided if you wanted to go again and you decided if you wanted to go again. And you were rolling two dice at a time. And he rolled and he rolled again and he rolled again and whatever. And he kept getting really close to 15.
Mhm,
And I was like, this is so strange. Like, what's
mhm,
the story? Like, what's the chances of that? And he was laughing. And I was like,
mhm.
what's going on here? And I was never getting it. But what I
Yep.
noticed was when he was rolling, he happened to have two dice that only had the numbers 1, 2, and 3 on them. It didn't have 4, 5, and 6.
Mhm.
So he kept rolling them and kept beating me. And I was like this kid apparently, like he was way ahead. He was thinking way clearer than I was, and
Yep.
he really struggled with reading. So
Mhm,
it showed to me that don't brand them straight away. Give them an opportunity to excel. Give them games and things that that meets their level, and then you know dictate whether they're going to do this higher level or ordinary level. I think we're too quick to put people in a bracket. Like I suppose it
mhm.
comes back to the iterations thing that if you take juggling, you're going to fail about 100 times before you get it. But if you take algebra and get it wrong once in an exam,
Mhm,
you're told, "Oh no, you're not capable of this."
mhm.
That's not really fair.
Yeah. And so just on that point, how what advice or what maybe based on the workshops you've run, what advice would you give to teachers? As in, like, what could teachers do to maybe not categorize students straight away? Maybe give them a little bit of time. Are there certain
Yeah, look,
things
it's
they could
it's
do?
really hard. I, I
Hmm.
I do understand and empathize with teachers. It is really, really hard because right now everybody wants to do higher level,
Mhm.
and not everybody is capable of doing higher level. So there's a balancing act there. But I do think we need to forget the fact that maths is so black and white. Maths
Mhm.
is incredible for, well, you either got it right or you got it wrong. Simple as that. Too bad. Whereas if we had some avenue to see their thinking along the way, then you have an opportunity to say, okay, here's where you went wrong. This
Mhm.
point here, you were right up until there. At this point, you made a small mistake and you got it. But look at the time in a classroom is the biggest issue. Like, I do think the curriculum, especially at even at higher level, is just huge. It's absolutely massive. Um, and teachers are like, well, I won't get the material covered
Mhm.
if I have to explain this to a student who's struggling. So in a way, it's more of a systematic fault than the teacher's fault would be what I'd say.
Mhm. And out of interest, so when you go around to when you do the different games, what's the feedback from the teachers?
Feedback is generally fairly good.
Mhm.
Like, you're always going to have one or two teachers that go, sure, where's the maths in this?
Mhm.
Where are we? And I have to explain it to, and I always go with the phrase, when you're explaining, you're losing. If you
Yeah.
have to explain it, you're not winning.
Mhm.
So, but predominantly the teachers actually come to me and go, "Oh, that was really fun. That was engaging. They like that. They
Mhm.
kind of they praise what I'm doing." But the biggest thing for me, I do know, is I have to listen to both those teachers. I have to take both opinions on board and really give a workshop that meets both needs. That is deeply ingrained in, patterns and problem solving and everything like that, but also has the fun element as well that inspires creativity.
Mhm. Excellent. Yeah. Um, and I suppose yeah, I'm trying to think. So if you were, let's say, because you mentioned you mentioned you were looking to work with so 5,000 students this coming year, and you're looking to deliver more workshops, go around the country more, and employ more people. So what, I suppose, if there's someone listening to this to this video podcast, what advice would you have? Like, if they've not done something like this before, what advice would you
Yeah,
give them?
look, I suppose just reach out. I do all of my advertising on Instagram. I put
Hmm.
everything up on Instagram. I'm just completely transparent, and here's what happens and how everything goes. And it's worth just writing a message. I always tailor it to the school. We're
Hmm.
always trying to meet the needs of the school, go by the timetable of the school, the day of the week that works, the groups. If you don't want to do a transition year one, I have other things for junior students and for, I could even take and even start higher level group if they had the time, of course. But transition year is the real niche. I suppose I was in a school the other day and the teacher was saying, oh, they didn't feel transition year was any benefit to the student. But similar to the workshop, it's not just about the maths that they're learning. They learn a lot of key skills around persistence, about learning their personal interests, about resilience, key things that if you highlight them, the kid will go, oh yeah, I actually did that.
Hmm.
But if it's just a juggling workshop, they go, well, I can't juggle. But if you say, well, here's what you did displaying these skills, then they boost their confidence again. So I do think it can boost their confidence 100%. And I just say, any teacher, I'm happy to organise a workshop in any school. Just reach out to me and we'll get talking.
Yeah, interesting. And just on that point, so do you find, say, with students, because oftentimes, like, I believe people, students and adults, everyone likes to see feedback. So what impact am I making, or how am I meeting certain criteria?
Yeah.
So would you set criteria in advance for students? Like, say,
Mm.
hey, this is what you want to be looking at. Because we were talking earlier about for example, we were talking about the feedback, maybe the feeling that, oh, I failed, I've not managed to juggle properly, or I've not managed to do the
Yeah.
task properly. But you mentioned, like, you see the feedback, how they're progressing. Yeah, interested in knowing your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So it's very immediate for the student. And
Hmm.
that's how it's similar to maths. We were saying maths is either right or wrong. It's very immediate for the students to realize, oh, at that time it didn't go for me. Oh, at that time I got it. Yes, I got it. Woohoo.
Hmm.
It's
Yes.
very clear cut. And I suppose that's in the juggling that they can see themselves how they're doing. Um, but I always make it very clear that I've only been juggling for 16 years.
Mhm.
I always say it. So even though I've been doing it since the last 16 years, I still make mistakes. So they should have
Yep.
no bother making mistakes whatsoever. And I suppose the feedback, I always make it personal as well. Sorry, I always say personal. I make it individual.
Mhm.
I'm never going to put somebody up in front of the group and say, "Hey, everybody, watch this kid try to juggle here." I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
That's not helpful to them at all. But I do ask them all to wear name tags. I give them name tags, and it just means that I can say Ian or Sarah or Tony or whoever it might be, and give them individual feedback. I think they appreciate it when it's individual rather than a group thing of here's what not to do. I think when it's made
Mhm.
individual to them, and I always try to get round to the different groups. That's why I never take more than 30 students at a time. Um, it gives me time to get round to the different students to give them individual feedback rather than sweeping statements to the group.
Yeah, amazing. Seán, I really enjoyed chatting with you. I think it was a very fascinating topic, and I
Thank you, Ian.
really appreciated what you shared. Just any final comments from yourself, like things you're working on, how people can reach out to you.
Yeah, look, I suppose as I said, everything's just over Instagram at Mr. McWeeney. I hope to continue doing it and delivering more kind of immersive things. I also run summer programs called Northwest STEM Fest. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to the future. I've a few things up my sleeve that I'm not revealed just yet, but I feel it's going in the right direction anyway.
Excellent. Seán, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. Fair play.